Hey, this is Little Talk with Big Nikki.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Little Talks with Big Nikki. I am your host, Big Nikki. Happy Friday everybody. This is Friday, April 10th, I believe, if I have my dates right, which there's a very good chance that I do not. But yeah, we are just gonna get into it. Of course, I wish that, we could talk about something other than the virus. But we're not really going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about things that I've observed in the past 2 weeks that have to deal with this pandemic, people are calling it. So yeah, we're just going to get right into it. I want to talk about from the topic of letting people do what they need to do. I think that's the best way to say it. But let me explain and break down for you a little bit more of what I mean by that. So, sorry if you guys see me fidgeting. I'm just trying to get comfortable. I'm doing this on my floor and I have no back support, so bear with me. Letting people do what they need to do from... Okay, let me say that again. Okay, so what do I mean by letting people do what they need to do? I am saying that I have been noticing that people are, of course, this is an obvious statement, responding to this pandemic in different ways because everybody has past experiences, past traumas, current experiences, current traumas. Everybody's going to be responding to this differently, which is totally fine. What I'm noticing kind of a trend in, though, I'm going to talk from a couple different angles at this. First, I want to talk about from employment. I was talking to my friend Rochelle yesterday, and she made me think about this, which I think it's a really good and valid point, which is why I want to discuss it. So a lot of us, including myself, have lost their jobs. I have been furloughed from iHeart. I'm a freelancer, so I have not been working any gigs because there are no gigs to work. So I am unemployed right now. I have not filed for unemployment. Everyone always asks me that. I don't know if I will because I honestly don't know if I would get much from it. I don't know how long this thing's gonna last, so I don't know if it's really worth it for me to file unemployment right now, etc., etc. There's no easy answer. So A, I want to say stop giving people crap if they don't file for unemployment. B, stop giving people crap if they do file for unemployment. But bigger than that, and what me and Rochelle had talked about, was this idea of people like me who I don't have a job right now. I am looking at other people who do have a job, and if they complain or say something even if it's not complaining, but just say something about that they do have to go to work, are concerned about going to work, etc. Mine and the majority of other responses is usually be thankful that you still have a job to go to, which is valid from our side because right now we don't, and we would like to have that income coming in. So our point is valid. However, from the other perspective that Rochelle brought to me is the fact that people who are still working are, especially right now, being overworked due to having a lack of employees. People might have laid off some of their employees but kept others, so now those employees that are still working have to pick up the extra responsibilities. People quitting their jobs because they don't feel safe, people who work in grocery stores and stuff or restaurants. If they didn't feel putting their health on the line was worth it, then they might have told their employer they're not working, which leaves other people to pick up those responsibilities. So the people who are still working, not only are they, especially like in the cases of like grocery stores and stuff, working in what I would say somewhat like questionable or dangerous situations, even though I've seen like the stores doing like really good things, implementing like a lot of health and safety guidelines, not only for us as the customers but also like their employees. So like I'm not saying it's like a hazardous work condition, but there's still like a greater chance of these people contracting the virus. That's just statistically and logistically like how it goes. So not only are they being, susceptible to that more so than like any of us who maybe aren't working in a public setting at least, but also, like I said, they are having to pick up more hours, more responsibilities. So the complaint, if you want to call it that, on either side, I feel is valid. It's valid for us unemployed people to say, like people who are still working should be thankful they're still working and they have income coming in. That's 100% accurate. However, those who are still working also should have the right, without being like persecuted, to say like, I feel really overwhelmed. I am thankful I still have a job, but this is a lot on me mentally and emotionally, that I'm putting myself at risk, that I am working more hours, that I do have more responsibilities because we're short-staffed, like etc. etc. So just looking at from like those two sides of things, like everybody, I just want to say this, everybody right now is valid in feeling what they are feeling. If you have a job and you're feeling overwhelmed by that job, it's okay to say that. If you don't have a job and like you wish you still did, or you feel like people who have a job should be thankful, you're right, and a lot of them probably are thankful that they still have a job. But there's like my mom always says, there's like pros and cons in like every situation and everything. Like there's good and bad to either side of it. So it's like, you are valid to be feeling what you're feeling. You should talk to people and just express that you're feeling what you're feeling. I know in the last podcast I did, I said like, I was talking about like praying, like, honest prayers are the best prayers that you can pray, but that's also true with like earthly relationships. Like, you don't need to front like everything is okay. Like, people talk about this all the time, like social media has like created a world where perfection exists, or perceived perfection, I should say, exists. And it's like, you don't have to like do that to yourself. Like, especially now when the whole world is going through what you are going through, like I said, we're all affected in different ways, in different capacities, but that's what I'm saying is like, however you're feeling is valid. And I talked about this too, like, and I've seen so many people tweet this and like say this in their own way, shape, or form, and it's like, this is what I've been saying since day one. People are like, how are you doing? And my response has been, some days are better than others. Because they are. Some days I'm doing really good, I'm in a really good mood. Even sometimes some like hours I'm in a really good mood, and then next thing I know, like I'm not in a great mental space. Like I'm cranky, or I'm like just tired, and I'm whatever. Like, so some days are better than others. It just be honest. Like, I'm not gonna come on here or on my vlog and like pretend like I'm feeling a certain way that day. Like, it is what it is, and I'm just be real with it. Like, that's what I'm saying. You are valid in feeling what you're feeling. Be real and true to yourself and to others about how you're feeling and how you're doing, because it's not going to help you, and it's not going to help anyone else to get through this if you're just like faking the whole time that you're fine. Because maybe you do have like a rough week or a rough couple of weeks, but then next thing you know, like your friend's talking to you and they're like, yeah, like I'm going through like this right now, like I just mentally feel like this, and then you can be like, hey, I was in that space like a week ago, this is what I did to try to deal with it, or this is how I tried to cope with it. So like, being honest about how you're feeling in your situation is only going to help you get through and heal and cope with it, and then in turn help others, because like I said, everyone's gonna go through this at different stages, and go through different stages in this pandemic. So that's my first thing. Just want to say that. But like, the difference is kind of like in two groups of people, talking from that point of like employment, but now I want to get more into your outlook on things. So something that was also brought to light was the difference in between how people perceive things, how people choose to have their outlook on life, positive versus realist, or optimistic versus realistic. And this was brought to kind of like my attention, or like my thought, because me and Ryan, not that we had like a disagreement, but just the way he looks at things, he didn't really understand like why I was saying what I was saying, and then like because of how he looks at things, I didn't understand why he was saying what he was saying. So anybody who knows me, but if you don't, I'll just say like, I am a realistic person. I'm a type 1. I'm very fair. I'm very like logistical. Very like, things have to make sense. Like, if things do not make sense, I'm not like about it. So I'm very realistic. I feel like realists can get confused with pessimist, because we kind of just tell it like it is, state the facts type of thing, and people will say like, oh, you're being negative, or like you're looking at the glass half empty, and it's like, but this is what it is, like this is the reality of the situation. So regardless of that, that's how I look at the world. Ryan, on the other hand, is a very positive and optimistic person, and I love that about him, because he kind of like fills where I'm where I'm realistic. He's like, no, but like it's gonna like be good, it's gonna get better. Like, he's always like upbeat and like positive with stuff. And then I feel like I kind of, in a good way, compliment like his positivity to kind of sometimes bring him back down to earth. Like, well, yeah, but like in the reality, like this is what it is. So I feel like the two can complement each other well, but you have to understand like where the other person's coming from. And I want to discuss like what happened with us, because I'm sure other people are going through this, and I have other friends even that I've had these thoughts with, but like, of course, I didn't have the discussion with them that I had with Ryan. So pretty much what happened was, he was over and like me and Becca were talking about like the reality of like what the news is saying. Like, I don't watch the news, I don't keep up. Literally any news I get either comes from Becca, my roommate, or comes from Twitter. Like, I literally don't know anything. I'm not keeping tabs on this stuff. Like, they told us to stay at home, I'm staying at home, other than going to the grocery store. Okay, cool, great. So we were talking about, like, Becca was telling us stuff that like the researchers and the scientists were saying, like talking mainly I think about like the peak that like we are literally in the midst of right now, like about to be in, at least for Ohio. I can't speak for every nation or state, but at least here in Ohio, like we are about to be any moment now like hitting the peak, which they are projecting because people have been hopefully listening and social distancing and staying at home will be more of like a plateau, which was the whole point of the stay-at-home order to begin with. So that's good news from what they're saying right now, but again, these are only projections. Anything could happen, like nobody really knows. So anyway, we were like talking about that. We were just talking about like the severity of like staying at home and like people starting to wear masks, and I don't really remember like specifics about the conversation. But then Ryan said something where he's like, it's over, like it's done with, like And I was kind of like, what? So like in that moment when he was like, it's over, to me that was him saying that I'm not taking this seriously. I'm not really listening to like what they are saying. And like it's done with, it's in the past. And so that's how I interpreted what he was saying. So I came back like a little like pushback. I was like, it's not over, it's far from over. We haven't even hit the peak, aka the plateau, hopefully, of this thing yet. Like, how are you saying it's over? So like we kind of got into like this little like debate, because it's like I talked to him like after the fact, and I was like, okay, like we need to like talk about this, because I'm worried, because the way you were just sounding and talking, you're not taking this seriously. You're not like being realistic about the situation. You're saying it's like over and done with. And then we had the conversation where he told me, like, he's like, when I say it's over, he's like, I know it's really not, but he's like, I in a positive mindset am speaking like into existence. I have other friends that have said this too, like, I'm speaking it into existence, like this is gonna be over by May 1st. Like they're trying to have a positive mindset, or like Ryan saying like it's over, like we're at like the end of this thing, like try and have a positive mindset, that, and like speaking it into existence, which a lot of people like, that's a very big thing for a lot of people. They're like, I have to like write it down, I have to speak it into existence, or it's like not going to manifest itself. I don't really live like that, so like I don't, okay. I find that hard to relate to. Not saying it doesn't work, not saying like for a lot of people that's not like a very good thing. Like some people really, to get out of their own head and like out of depression and fear and anxiety, like they do need to speak things over their life, and that's great. Like, I mean, do what you need to do to get through this. I, for one, am just not really that type of person. So like when I hear Ryan or like my other friends say like, no, like by this date, like no, it's gonna be like, we're gonna be good, we're gonna be going back to work, like I'm looking at what the scientists are saying, what the doctors are saying, and at the state of our current situation, and I'm saying that's not realistic. So this is like where, as much as the two can like complement each other, they can also kind of like butt heads, because it is very hard for me. I don't want to be a negative Nelly. I don't want to be known as like a pessimist or someone who's like, oh, Nicole, like you're always like so negative about stuff. But it's like, look at the reality of the situation, look at the science of it, look at what like the professionals are saying, and this is not happening. Like what you're saying right now is not going to happen. So it's, for me, I'm still learning the fine line of allowing people in my life to be hopeful and positive and optimistic, but also trying to keep them realistic. And also, like I said, like I took that as them not taking the situation seriously, or them not understanding the severity of the situation. Almost like, to me, like when someone talks like that, like almost, I call it overly positive, because you can be a positive person, but sometimes to me it gets to a point where like it's too much. Like what you're saying is just too like not even down to earth in the slightest, and you're being like too optimistic. That to me gets into a place where I start to feel and believe that you are naive. Like you are literally living in like an ignorance of what is going on around you. And I feel like for a lot of people, that might be a coping mechanism. Like my roommate, she's been more realistic about this than I have, because like she's like, well, Nicole, like, what are you going to do if you get it or I get it? And, you know, we're in the apartment for 14 days. Like, what are we going to do for food? Like, she's like preparing like mentally for that scenario. I cannot do that. I cannot think like that, because if I think about being in this apartment quarantine for 14 plus days, I will go insane now. So I do have to, as she calls it, bury my head in the sand a little bit to mentally cope with today, with this week, with what's going on now. There again, some people might call her like negative or pessimistic, like, oh, she's saying like you guys are both gonna get it. But it's like, I understand what she's saying. Like, we do need to be prepared for if we both get it and we are quarantined in here. Like, she had, like, that makes logistical sense. But it's like, my coping mentality and how much I can deal with right now mentally, being pretty much on lockdown and stuff, is I cannot think like that, because I'm going to be in this situation, I guess, the little more of the optimistic person, and I'm speaking it into existence that we're not getting it. This virus is not coming in this apartment. Me and her are not going to get sick from it. Like, I'm saying that to myself. Do I know that that is 100% realistic? No, it's definitely not. And I know that. I know there's a chance that we could get sick. And then it's going to be like, crap, what if that happens and we aren't prepared and we don't have food and stuff? So, like, I get that, and I go back and forth, like, in that regard of it. So it's the same thing, like, where I kind of take the role of, like, the realist, and somebody else in my life is like, no, like, it's going to be done by, like, May 15th. Like, this is, like, we're going to be able to go back to work. And it's like, well, I don't think so. But there again, see, to them, that's how they're coping with it. So I guess, like, what I'm saying is, I fear when I hear people being too optimistic, too overly positive about a situation, whether it's, I'm just using the virus and this pandemic right now as an example that brought this to my attention, but this could be like in anything in life. Someone who's like too overly positive about something, I associate that with ignorance or being naive, or, as you know, Becca calls it, and I kind of like this saying, sticking your head in the sand. Like, you're waiting for the storm to pass and you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to prepare for it. You just are trying to, like, get through it somehow or something. And then, you know, like, my role in most of these times is like being the realistic person and trying to explain to someone who I feel is being ignorant. Like, I'm trying to explain to them why what they're saying is not going to come to fruition or come to pass, and then I look like the negative person. So it's like, it's a very, like, difficult balance. But there again, I'm under this the umbrella and the belief of, you need to do what you need to do to cope. I don't think you should live in ignorance. I do think you need to know a little bit, just like a smidge, about what's going on. See, like, Becca doesn't really mind looking at the news and, like, listening to the updates and what's going on. So I told her, whatever you think is important to, like, our lives, to tell us, like, to tell me about, like, is there an update for the stay-at-home order? Are we hitting the peak? Oh, it's, like, actually a plateau right now. That's good. Like, tell me these little bits, but I don't need to be exposed to all of it, because all of it, I think, to anyone is too much. It's too overwhelming, causes too much stress and anxiety. So get like a smidgen. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, you should not be 100% ignorant to the situation. Like, you should not be 100% naive to what is going on around you. That is not a healthy coping mechanism for anybody. But I am here, like, sitting in my own shoes. I can understand, and I'm in the position where there are certain aspects of this that you do need to maybe, to mentally deal with this, you do have to kind of stick your head in the sand a little bit. So I think it's important to surround yourself with like a good mix of people speaking into your life. Like you can have like encouraging, positive people speaking into your life, but then at the same time, like they're gonna, not that you want like negative people, like always like, oh, this many people died today, oh, we're definitely gonna get it, like not that type of like negativity, but someone still keeping you grounded and, you know, updated on the reality of the situation you're living in. So I think it's good to have like both sides of it. I guess playing devil's advocate, like just a little bit. And like I said, that role can switch. Like 99% of the time, I'm going to be the realistic person. I'm probably going to be the one like bringing you back down to planet Earth in the reality of the situation. But other times, like I'm a little bit of the optimist and I need somebody else to kind of pull me back down and bring me back to reality. So it's hard because those who are overly positive and optimistic all the time, they can easily view what you're saying and what you're trying to tell them as negative, because like I said, you're pretty much trying to bring them back down to a realistic state. And so when you're saying, well, that's not gonna happen, then now you're the pessimist, when in all reality you're kind of like the realist. I think of it like a timeline. So like the pessimist is here, realist is in the middle, and like optimistic's like over on the plus side, like, you know, like a negative and positive timeline. Like, and you can jump on that timeline at any point. Like a lot of us do, like depending on the situation, we do switch roles and go back and forth. But there again, I think it's important, like in that disagreement, I guess I'll call it, I don't know what to call it. It wasn't like we were arguing, but in that like unknown conversation between like me and Ryan, like we did have to go back and discuss it after and break it down, and me say, well, when you said it was over, I felt like you were just ignorant to the situation, like not taking it seriously. And then he had to say, well, when you and Becca talk about like the facts surrounding the pandemic, I feel like that's like open, like inviting like negative or pessimistic like thoughts when I'm trying to be like positive about it. And it's like everything both of us said is 100% valid, but there again, you have to know how to communicate like with people who do have a different overall outlook than you, because if you don't, like it could get like into like a nasty like argument, which isn't helpful or good for anyone. So it's just kind of like knowing, you know, like it's knowing like how to talk to someone who looks at things differently than you. And I wanna, sorry, I'm like making a lot of noise this night. This mic picks up like everything. So I'm reading this book called Crushing by Bishop T.D. Jakes. It's called God Turns Pressure into Power. I started this book like literally a year ago when I ordered it on Amazon, and I have not since finished it. I think I'm only on like chapter like 4 or 5 at this rate. But I was reading it the other day, and I was kind of thinking about doing this as like a podcast topic. And I read this and I was like, oh, this is so relevant. So he said, here's what makes the difference in shifting our perspective, which when you are trying to have these conversations with someone who does think a little different than you, you do kind of have to shift your perspective and put yourself in their mindset, and like vice versa. Like both of you should be trying to understand it from the other person's point of view, and if you don't, you need to have a conversation about it. But okay, what makes a difference in shifting our perspective? In the midst, gosh, I'm so sorry guys, I cannot read. In the midst of suffering, we must allow ourselves to find faith without denying truth. We must experience the freedom to express our pain and discomfort without becoming paralyzed by our wounds. We must also enjoy the liberation that only hope can bring, the hope born of understanding that we are not being punished but merely pruned. We are being cut only so we can grow stronger and straighter, truer, and more trustworthy. So I really like the first two sentences when he said we have to like allow ourselves to find faith without denying truth. And so that's like the mentality like I'm talking about from a realist standpoint. Like, yeah, like let's have faith like that this thing is gonna clear up by this date. Like, let's, hope for the best case scenario, but let's also prepare or, not deny the truth of like potentially the worst case scenario. So like I really, the cliche saying of like, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, like that's literally the mindset that I am living out of as much as I can. And I think like that's really important. Yeah, so I think it's like, sorry, I was seeing if there was like something else on the page I wanted to read, but I think that covers it. Like, you can be hopeful, you can be positive and optimistic, but you also have to be realistic. And there again, like, as long as you know the reality within yourself of the situation, then speak positive things into existence. That's good. Like, a lot of people like me, I need to hear that sometimes because I don't really usually do that for myself, but it's like at the same time you need to just you need to not deny the truth or the severity of what is going on, I guess. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope everything I just said makes sense. I feel like sometimes on here I'm just like rambling my thoughts that seem jumbled, but hopefully they actually are sequential and they make an ounce of sense to somebody. But yeah, so like that's the whole point of this podcast. Like, do what you need to do to cope. If you need, there again, don't live in complete ignorance. Don't live in complete fairy tale land where everything is sunshine and roses. Like, there again, two very extreme opposite ends of the spectrum that are not good for you or people around you for you to live in as a way of coping. But, try to find like that happy medium on the timeline. Like, try to find like, okay, I need to be realistic about this situation, but as far as this goes, if I think about that, it's like too much for me mentally. I need to kind of remain a little more positive in this area. Or you know what? I'm being like a little too like hopeful or, optimistic in this area. Maybe I need to be a little more realistic and like have a plan, have a preparation, etc., etc. So I hope that makes sense. Just two examples, like I said, one like more intellectually how you view the world, one from like a very physical manifestation of like things that everybody can see, like working and not working, like that's very visible to people, but kind of two different ends of the spectrum of people got to do and say what they got to do and say to cope in this time. And that is okay, and your feelings are valid, whatever they might be. I think we need to there again, I understand the positive social media posts, but I think sometimes it can be too much because it's like if you just keep telling everybody, and this is what the next episode of the podcast is gonna kind of be about. Like, I guess I'm leading into it a little bit now, but I want it to be a whole separate episode. Hopefully gonna get some feedback from people on my social media about like what they're thinking and feeling about this, but kind of like the expectation is there that like if you do not do this or achieve this in quarantine, then like you wasted time or you like were lazy. It's like all these things surrounding that like thought process of like, again, yes, we're encouraging people to learn new things and we're encouraging people to be motivated and active and like do what they could be using this time to do to improve themselves and society, and that's great. But also I don't think we should be belittling people who are struggling to literally get out of bed. Okay, like there are people who this is not good for them, like people with mental health especially. Like I saw some things on Twitter, like people with depression and anxiety, like this is like a huge step back for them. My roommate the other day actually said she's more of like an introvert, and I talked about that on the podcast before. So she's kind of like okay with this whole like social distancing, staying at home. She's like, I'm cool with this, like I don't I don't need to be going out and being like with a ton of people and around people all the time. Like, I'm fine with this. But she did admit the other day, she's like, this probably is like not good for my like social interaction like levels, because her going to work, or like her, you know, going out and just being with people in some regard or another, like church or whatever, like she was forced to socially interact, and like now she's not. So she's like, I'm okay with it, but like deep down she knows like that's probably not really great for her going forward, like that she has this time and she's not forced to be around people. So it's kind of like the same thing. Like, it doesn't even have to be as serious as mental health, but just like, you know, this isn't great for a lot of people and a lot of things for a lot of reasons, but it can also be great for a lot of people and a lot of things and a lot of reasons. So there again, yes, encourage, speak positivity, try to motivate people to do, you know, new things or improve upon things that they already, you know, do, like a skill they possess or a creative talent or something. That's great. But also, like, let's not make people feel bad or like belittle them for maybe not getting there or not getting there yet because they're struggling to do basic things like get out of bed and eat every day. We're gonna dive into that more on the next episode of the podcast, but just kind of wanted to like throw that in there too, because it kind of relates to doing what you need to do to cope. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope you guys are all like healthy and safe. Please, like, believe me, I'm an extrovert. This is killing me. I hate this whole lockdown thing. The sunshine definitely helps. I love the sunshine. The temperatures are warming up, so that's really nice. Cool if you like go outside. Like, I know we took the dog on a walk the other night, just like a short walk around the block. I know we went to like a metro park this past Saturday. So like, being outside is cool. Just try to maintain social distancing. Try to be smart about things. Like, especially if we are going to hit the peak like they're saying, maybe limit your trips to the grocery store, or how many stores you're going to, which I know is like what my plan is for the next at least week to 2 weeks. Just be smart about it, but like, we're all going to get through this. We're not all going through the same thing, but we are all in the same, being affected by the same thing. So, we're all being affected by the same thing, but not in the same way. There, profound quote. Post that on your social medias. Share this with a friend. I really appreciate you guys who watch this week in and week out. You guys just make this like so worth doing. But also, like I said, this is therapy for me. Hope this is therapy for you. Give you something to listen to while you're at home, while you're working or doing schoolwork, whatever it might be. But we will see you guys next time. Follow me on social media if you do not already. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Download this podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast. We're on pretty much every platform other than iTunes. And that's just because I'm being stubborn and I don't want to make an iTunes account. But, or Apple Podcast. Sorry, it's called Apple Podcast. Every other platform pretty much other than that. I appreciate you guys listening and taking time out to watch so much. I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.